we have to. That process is mentioned in all the Vedic scripture. That is called Bhakti Yoga, that process. Krishna also says in the Bhagavad-Gita, Bhaktyamam abhijanati javan jasyami tat. If anyone wants to know Krishna, what he is, then one has to accept the process of Bhakti Yoga. There are different types of yogas. Yoga means linking oneself with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, speculative yoga will not help us. You have to take concrete yoga. Concrete yoga is Krsna Consciousness. So, we have given our introduction of the Bhagavad-Gita that one has to understand Bhagavad-Gita as it is directed in the Bhagavad-Gita. There is direction. How to read Bhagavad-Gita. People are reading Bhagavad-Gita without taking the direction. This we have explained in the manner that if you take some medicine, there is some direction on the bottle. That this is the dose. You take so many drops, so many times, that is direction. Similarly, for understanding Bhagavad Gita actually, you have to accept the direction as given by the author himself, Krishna. He says that long ago, some 40 millions of years ago, he first spoke this Bhagavad Gita to the sun god. And the sun god transmitted the knowledge to his son Manu. And Manu transmitted the knowledge to his son Ikhaku. Imam vivasati jugam pratvanaham abhayam. Vivasan manave praha manu ikhaga vipravit. So, the Rajarshis, they are all kings. Manu is king. Maharaj Ikhaku is also king. And the sun god Vivashan, he is also king. He is the king of the sun planet, and his grandson Ikhaku became the king of this planet, Maharaj Ikhaku. And in this dynasty, which is known as Raghuvansha, Lord Ramchandra appeared. It is a very old monarchical family. Ikhaku Vansha, Raghuvansha. Vansha means family. So formally, the kings, the head of the administrative executive, they used to learn the thesis or the injunction given by God. So, according to Bhagavad Gita, only a devotee of Krishna, a person who is intimately related with Krishna, he can understand what is Bhagavad Gita.
Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sorry about the video feed. It wasn't quite matching the voice. We'll try and fix that for next week. Now let's chant the Mangala Charan together. Hold on a second, do some more sharing. So this is in the introduction. Okay, you can unmute and let's all, eventually we will become like a choir and we'll all be exactly the same. We have a few weeks, we have a few sessions to practice. What I do is if I can lead it, I will lead the pace and then you can all chant along and follow along.
Yes.
Don't worry too much of it, not all exactly the same. Okay, so we can all unmute and together we can chant. Om Jnana Timarandasya Bhakvaya Chakshum Militam Yena Shri Chaitanya
Swayam
Swayam Rupatamaham
Dadati Swapadantikam
Vandeham
Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavam
Shri Rupam
Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Tam Sajitam Advaitam Savadhutam Harijana Chaitanya Devam Radha Krishna Sadam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakha Vitam Saja He Krishna Karuna Sindhu
Bandhu Jagat Gopisha Gopika
Kanta
Radha Namaste
Kanjana Gaurangi
Gaurangi Radhe
Vrindavaneshwari
Vishnanustate Devi Pranamami Hare
Hare Kalpatarubhyascha Patitanah Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha
Sri Krishna Chaitanya Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati
Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna
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 Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama
Rama Rama
Hare
Hare Hare
Namo Om Vishnu
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna Bhutale
Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurani Pracharine Vishesha Srimadi Paschat Deshnarine
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. So, we've covered so far the preface and a few highlights from the preface. Prabhupada gave us a little history of the first printing of the Bhagavad-Gita as it is. This was printed by Macmillan, I think it was, and as Prabhupada says, it was wasn't up to his complete satisfaction. It was didn't have any pictures in, no illustrations. I don't think it had the Sanskrit even. And that was the Macmillan Bhagavad-Gita. Later, the full out of demand, Prabhupada said, then the full edition came out. And this nice sentence here is very nice. Prabhupada says here, is highlighted in green here. Our Krishna consciousness movement is genuine, historically authorized, natural, and transcendental due to its being based on Bhagavad Gita as it is. It is gradually becoming the most popular movement in the world. Yeah, and it still is. It may be more gradual than what we all thought, but it is becoming the most popular movement in the world amongst the younger generation, Prabhupada said, and also becoming the older generation becoming interested also. And then Prabhupada, in great humility, he gives preference to his spiritual master, who's Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. If I have any credit in this matter of anything worth praising, it's all due to my spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Papa mentioned that. Very nice. And then Prabhupada mentions he mentions the Bhagavad Gita as it is, as opposed to other editions of the Bhagavad Gita. And they gave an example where Krishna says, just meditate upon me, man mana bhavat mat bhakto. Whereas we mention, for example, Dr. Radha Krishna's presentation of Gita mentions that it's not to Krishna, but the unborn within Krishna. So Prabhupada is addressing that. And he's mentioned that it's actually, this is the Parampara presentation of the Bhagavad Gita. He mentions there's other commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, one by Shankaracharya, by Mayavad Bhasya. And so Prabhupada mentions there in the bottom here, the purpose of the Gita is to guide the conditioned student to the same purpose of which Krishna descends to this planet. Yeah, to Janma Kama Chame Divyam, to attain the spiritual world. And here Prabhupada mentions that the Krishna conscious movement is essential for its offering the highest perfection in life. So that perfection is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Yes. All right. So then we made our way into the introduction and we read the verses here. And as far as I'm made out, we are here, this page here, but we'll go back just one paragraph and we get a context of where we left off. So if anyone would like to read, you can raise your hand. And then Mother Lawang Latika has a hand up first, so you can go ahead. You can just read from here, Mother. This part here, yeah? You need to unmute. I've muted everyone.
Yeah, okay. The spirit of Bhagavad Gita is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita itself. It is just like this. If we want to take a particular medicine, then we have to follow the directions written on the label. We cannot take the medicine according to our own whim or the direction of a friend. It must be taken according to the directions on the label or the directions given by a physician. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita should be taken or accepted. I need the next page. Yeah. As it is directed by the speaker himself. The speaker of Bhagavad Gita is Lord Shri Krishna. He is mentioned on every page of Bhagavad Gita as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. Of course, the word Bhagavan sometimes refers to any powerful person or any powerful demigod, and certainly here Bhagavan designates Lord Shri Krishna as a great personality. But at the same time, we should know that Lord Shri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as is confirmed by all great acharyas, spiritual masters, like Sankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarka Swami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and many other authorities of Vedic knowledge in India. The Lord himself also establishes himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad Gita, and he is accepted as such in the Brahma Samhita and all the Puranas, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Bhagavad Purana, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Therefore, we should take Bhagavad Gita as it is directed by the personality of Godhead himself. In the 4th chapter of the Gita, chapter 4, 1-3, the Lord says, Svam vivasvya te yogam praktavanaham avyayam vivasvan manave praha manoriksva kave bravit.
Sorry.
Yeah. Evam parampara praptam imam rajar sayovadu sakalaneha mahata yoganasta parantapa sa evayam mayate tya yoga prakta paratana bhakto sime sakachati rahasyam hi etad uttamam. Here the Lord informs Arjuna that this system of yoga, the Bhagavad Gita, was first spoken to the sun god, and the sun god explained it to Manu, and Manu explained it to Ikshvaku, and in that way, by disciplic succession, one speaker after another, this yoga system has been coming down. But in the course of time, it has become lost. Consequently, the Lord has to speak it again, this time to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He tells Arjuna that he is relating this supreme secret to him because Arjuna is his friend, his devotee, and his friend. The purport of this is that Bhagavad Gita is a treatise which is especially meant for the devotee of the Lord. There are three classes of transcendentalists, namely the Jnani, the Yogi, and the Bhakta, or the impersonalist, the meditator, and the devotee. Here the Lord clearly tells Arjuna that he is making him next page.
Oh, sorry, I'm reading from another text. Yeah.
He's making him the first receiver of a new parampara, disciplic succession, because the old succession was broken. It was the Lord's wish, therefore, to establish another parampara in the same line of thought that was coming down from the sun god to others, and it was his wish that his teaching be distributed anew by Arjuna. He wanted Arjuna to become the authority in understanding the Bhagavad Gita. So we see that Bhagavad Gita is instructed to Arjuna, especially because Arjuna was a devotee of the Lord, a direct student of Krishna, and his intimate friend. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita is best understood by a person who has qualities similar to Arjuna's. That is to say, he must be a devotee in a direct relationship with the Lord. As soon as one becomes a devotee of the Lord, he also has a direct relationship with the Lord. That is a very elaborate subject matter, but briefly it can be stated that a devotee is in a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in one of 5 different ways. One may be a devotee in a passive state, one may be a devotee in an active state, one may be a devotee as a friend, one may be a devotee as a parent, one may be a devotee as a conjugal lover. Arjuna was in a relationship with the Lord as friend. Of course, there is a gulf of difference between this friendship and the friendship found in the material world. This is transcendental friendship, which cannot be had by everyone. Of course, everyone has a particular relationship with the Lord, and that relationship is evoked by the perfection of devotional service. But in the present status of our life, not only have we forgotten the Supreme Lord, but we have forgotten our eternal relationship with the Lord. Every living being out of many, many billions and trillions of living beings has a particular relationship with the Lord eternally. That is called Swarupa. By the process of devotional service, one can revive that Swarupa, and that stage is called Swarupa Siddhi, perfection of one's constitutional position. So Arjuna was a devotee, and he was in touch with the Supreme Lord in friendship. How Arjuna accepted this Bhagavad Gita should be noted. His manner of acceptance is given in the 10th chapter, chapter 10, 12 to 14. Arjuna uvacha param brahma param dhamma pavitram paramam bhavan parasam sasvatam divyam adidevam ajam vibhum abhustvam risaya sarve devarsir naradastata. Next page.
Yeah.
Asito devalovyasa swayam jaiva bhavisi me Sarvameta Dritamanye Yanman Vadasi Keshava Nahite Bhagavan Yaktim Vidurvadeva Nadanava. Arjuna said, "You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages such as Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyas confirm this truth about you. And now you yourself are declaring it to me. O Krishna, I totally accept as truth all that you've told me. Neither the demigods nor the demons, O Lord, can understand your personality."
So just pause there. Any reflections or questions here? Because this is quite a long introduction, so quite some reading to do. There's one question I was going to ask you. It mentioned that the Bhagavad Gita seems to be lost. This is a verse on the 4th chapter. Can anyone say how and why, or how does it get lost? What actually happens? What can actually happen for this chain of disciplic succession, or these sacred teachings to be lost? Because there is always a disciplic succession. There's always a disciplic succession is there. It's not as if it disappears. But the Bhagavad Gita, yeah.
As far as I know, it gets polluted, and the knowledge is lost because someone comes along with their own idea and like degrades the parampara, and it gets diverted from the actual truth.
Yes. Anyone else?
But maybe it's a time factor, because the time erodes everything, and it can also
Yeah, time
erode.
factor. That's a fact. Time factor is a fact. Yeah.
I can, like, I was thinking of giving an example, like at the moment we have Ritwik on one side.
Yeah.
People, like, you know, people all go to Ritwik, then, you know, what Prabhupada's teaching gets lost, you know.
Yeah, so there's three answers which are all correct. You know, I would say first one that Mother Lavanga gave is just quite simple, that people give a different spin or give a different, as also Chandravali mentioned in regards to the Ritwik understanding of philosophy. Although we both agree on the Siddhanta, on this aspect of the truth of Krishna, we just have some big differences on the point of Guru Tattva. But yeah, things become lost. Just like we heard this example that's often given in schools, like at the Chinese whisper. Things
Is it
become
also because people get polluted as time goes on, and people's minds become polluted, and they sort of look at the Bhagavad Gita and just understand what they want to understand, which is convenient to them, rather than what the Shastras say. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
something that they just want to, for their own convenience, they're just doing the minor part of the Bhagavad Gita rather than following the scriptures.
Yeah, Prabhupada mentioned the cheaters and the cheated. Some persons don't want the real thing, they actually want to be cheated. So they give a material interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita, so-called, using it to fulfill their material desires in a so-called religious way. Yeah.
Prabhu, can
So-
I say about imperfect senses? Because we are looking at perfect something with our imperfect.
Yeah, so we're kind of bound to make mistakes because we got a machine that doesn't work properly. We got a computer that is malfunctioning.
Yeah, it is not that you don't know how to make it.
Yeah, so that's why we need the parampara. Yeah, it's in, also we can look at the very fact that, as Prabhupada has mentioned, the reason he's titled it the Bhagavad Gita as it is, because there is many interpretations of the Bhagavad Gita which give a different meaning. So we could say that as Krishna appeared to again teach the real Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, so we could say also that Prabhupada came again after Krishna. He came in these contemporary times in order to actually show everyone what is the Bhagavad Gita, what it actually means. So we could say, isn't it, that Prabhupada is playing that role as well, the same role that Krishna played. Prabhupada is playing that role. There's so many different misunderstandings of the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
So Prabhupada's come. Prabhupada's coming, he's coming in the parampara. So the parampara is always there, but sometimes it becomes obscured and it seems to be lost. That's why it says it seems to be lost. So actually there is always some sages who are aware of the pure teachings of the Bhagavad Gita or the absolute truth, but they may not be in abundance, you know. So, and also time was mentioned, I think Rajkishore mentioned about time. It's just a fact. Time degrades everything. Everything becomes, that's the nature of this material world. We mentioned that just like water always finds its lowest point. So Krishna has to come himself again and again to re-establish Dharma. And as soon as he leaves, more or less, slowly but surely, it becomes covered. So then therefore Krishna comes again, or otherwise we have the parampara, and he empowers devotees to actually give the real or to actually give the real Siddhanta, the absolute truth. So yeah, these are all nice. These are all various reasons why it seems to be lost. So persons have cannot understand properly, so they don't hear from the parampara. They come their own interpretation. Yeah, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we can continue reading. Prabhupada's quoting a lot of verses in this introduction from the Bhagavad Gita itself. These are all standard verses to learn if you're so inclined. These are verses here.
Hare Krishna Prabhu,
Yes.
I was thinking this is also part of Lord's plan, that he has to come again and again to remind us, and also his devotees should be glorified. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, as a bhakta of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Prabhupada came. This is also in the Lord's plan.
Yeah, no doubt. The Lord is the ultimate conductor of affairs. Even the whole Bhagavad Gita, the battle itself was Krishna's plan. Yeah. And Arjuna was to play a role in that plan. Yeah. Yeah, interesting today on book distribution, I had one man, he was standing a bit aside, a bit away from me, and I waved to him and he smiled. So I thought, oh, that's a good sign. And then he came over and he was actually reading Bhagavad Gita. And he couldn't understand it. He was asking me why did so many people have to be killed in order for Bhagavad Gita to be spoken? Why did Krishna tell Arjuna to actually kill his relatives? So it's not the question you find every day on Covent Garden. So I had a good opportunity to explain to him the actual Krishna, what the plan was, what Krishna's plan was. But yeah, everything is Krishna's plan ultimately. Krishna's divine plan. Yes. All right, if there's any more questions or comments or reflections, if not, we can read on. Let's have Monica Mother, you can read, picking it up from
The after hearing?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
After hearing Bhagavad Gita from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Arjuna accepted Krishna as Param Brahma, the Supreme Brahman. Every living being is Brahman, but the Supreme Living Being, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Brahman. Param Dhamma means that he is the supreme rest of abode of everything. Pavitram means that he is pure, untainted by material contamination. Purusham means that he is the superior enjoyer. Saswatam, eternal, Divyam, transcendental, Adidevam, the original supreme personality of Godhead, Ajam, the unborn, and Vibhum, the greatest. Now one may think that because Krishna was the friend of Arjuna, Arjuna was telling him all this by way of flattery. But Arjuna, just to drive out this kind of doubt from the minds of the readers of Bhagavad Gita, substantiates these praises in the next verse, when he says that Krishna is accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not only by himself, but the authorities like Narada, Ashita, Devala, and Vyasadeva. These are great personalities who distribute the Vedic knowledge as it is accepted by all acharyas. Therefore, Arjuna tells Krishna that he accepts whatever he says to be completely perfect. Sarvam itat ratam manye. I accept everything you say to be true. Arjuna also says that the personality of the Lord is very difficult to understand and that he cannot be known even by the great demigods. This means that Lord cannot even be known by personalities greater than human beings. So how can a human being understand Lord Sri Krishna without becoming his devotee? Therefore, Bhagavad Gita should be taken up in a spirit of devotion. One should not think that he is equal to Krishna, nor should he think that Krishna is an ordinary personality, or even a great personality, or even a very great personality. Lord Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So according to the statements of Bhagavad Gita, or the statements of Arjuna, the person who is trying to understand the Bhagavad Gita, we should at least theoretically accept Sri Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And with this submissive spirit, we can understand the Bhagavad Gita. Unless one reads the Bhagavad-Gita in a submissive spirit, it is very difficult to understand Bhagavad-Gita because it is a great mystery.
I will just ask a question here. There's one example that Prabhupada gives, which Prabhupada gives, which he heard from his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to explain this point. It's a simple, nice example. And it explains how the speculative person, how non-devotees cannot understand the Bhagavad Gita. Can anyone say what example he gives? He might bring it up in the introduction itself. It's very common. Prabhupada often mentions it, and it's coming from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So the example is given to show how non-devotees cannot understand the Bhagavad Gita. I can give you a clue, and as soon as I mention a part of the clue, you will all know it immediately.
Imperfect senses?
Not. 1 second, I shall get a prop to show you. Give you a clue. 1 second.
Oh yes, licking the outside of the bottle of honey.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. How can I get in this honey? So the non-devotee is trying to taste the honey without taking the lid off. Yeah. Now my hands are sticky. Now I have to go and wash my hands after this.
We knew that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's a simple example. It's nice, and it's a simple, nice example that illustrates it very nicely. They can't understand. They have to take the lid off. So this is a very important principle for understanding Bhagavad Gita. To actually really to enter into the mysteries of it, we have to be devoted to Krishna. We have to accept Krishna as the supreme, absolute personality of Godhead. And he was quoting from the 10th chapter as well. Also, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma. Yeah, I just thought I'd make that. I just remembered that example. Thought I'd just test you on that. So well done, you got it. I gave you a prop, but okay, you can continue my reading. If there's any other, unless there's some other questions, anxiety.
Just what is the Bhagavad Gita? The purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is to deliver mankind from the nuisance of material existence. Every man is in difficulty in so many ways, as Arjuna also was in difficulty in having to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. Arjuna surrendered unto Sri Krishna, and consequently this Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Not only Arjuna, but every one of us is full of anxieties because of this material existence. Our very existence is the atmosphere of non-existence. Actually, we are not meant to be threatened by non-existence. Our existence is eternal, but somehow or other we are put into asat. Asat refers to which does not exist. Out of so many human beings who are suffering, there are a few who are actually inquiring about their position, as to what they are, why they are put into this awkward position, and so on. Unless one is awakened to this position of questioning his suffering, unless he realizes that he doesn't want suffering, but rather wants to make a solution to all suffering, then one is not to be considered a perfect human being. Humanity begins with this sort of inquiry, is awakened in one's mind. In the Brahma Sutra, this inquiry is called Brahma Jignasha, Atato Brahma Jignasha. Every activity of the human being is to be considered a failure unless he inquires about the nature of the Absolute. Therefore, those who begin to question why they are suffering or where they come from and where they shall go after death are proper students for understanding the Bhagavad Gita. The sincere student should also have a firm respect for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a student was Arjuna. Lord Krishna descends specifically to re-establish the real purpose of life. When man forgets that purpose, even then, out of many, many human beings who awaken, there may be one who actually enters the spirit of understanding his position. and for him, this Bhagavad-Gita is spoken. Actually, we are all swallowed by the tigress of nuisance, but the Lord is very merciful upon living entities, especially human beings. To this end, he spoke the Bhagavad-Gita, making his friend Arjuna his student. Being an associate of Lord Krishna, Arjuna was above all ignorance. But Arjuna was put into ignorance on the battlefield of Kurukshetra just to question Lord Krishna about the problems of life, so that the Lord could explain them for the benefit of future generations of human beings and chalk out the plan of life. And then man can act accordingly and perfect the mission of human life. The subject of the Bhagavad Gita entails a comprehension of 5 basic truths. First of all, the science of God is explained, and then the constitutional position of the living entities, jivas. There is Ishvara, which means the controller, and there are jivas, the living entities, which are controlled. If a living entity says that he is not controlled but that he is free, then he is insane. The living being is controlled in every respect, at least in his conditioned life. So in the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matter deals with Ishvara, the supreme controller, and the jivas, the controlled living entities. Prakriti, material nature, and time, the duration of existence of the whole universe, or the manifestation of material nature, and karma, activity, are also discussed. The cosmic manifestation is full of different activities. All living entities are engaged in different activities. From Bhagavad Gita, we must learn what God is, what the living entities are, what Prakriti is, what the cosmic manifestation is, how it is controlled by time, and what the activities of the living entities are.
Okay, let's just stop there. There's a specific term that's used here to describe this type of questions. There's all of Prabhupada's purports and all of the Vedic scriptures can be divided into 3 topics.
Brahma Jignasha?
Yeah, well, that's the term given. That's the term. That's correct. That's from the Brahma Sutra, also known as the Vedanta Sutra, and that should be the human form of life means that one should be inquisitive about one's existential position. But what's being described here is there's Abhidaya, Gyan.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah.
On the tip of your tongue. Well, the first one is Sambandha. So this is Sambandha, actually. What's been described. So there's 5. This is good to try and memorize the 5 topics of Bhagavad Gita, which comprises Sambandha Gyan. So here are those 5 subject matters. So 1 is karma. Second, what did you describe? Material nature. First is the Ishvara, that's Krishna. Then the jivas, then prakriti, then karma, then time is also mentioned. Is it?
Yes, time is there.
Time, yeah. Time is also. So these are the 5 subject matters which are discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, time itself, or time and karma. So karma is described. Just see where it says about time. What does it say? Time here. Doesn't, but time is also one of the subjects. Yeah, it is. How it's controlled by time. Yeah, how it's controlled by time, and that's it. So these are the 5 subject matters of Bhagavad Gita. It's there. There's a control by time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what the activities of. So what's the interrelationship between all of these? That's called Sambandha Gyan. And then next is there's 3. The next one is Abhidaya. Abhidaya. So what does Abhidaya mean?
Process or a path.
Process of devotional service.
Yeah, it means the process. That's it, the process. And then we have Prayojan, which is the goal. Yeah. Yes, it is the 5 basic subject matters, and Prabhupada mentions that here. Right. And someone else like to read? Who's got their hand up? Nimai Matu, you have your hand up. You can read from here.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Out of these 5 basic subject matters in Bhagavad Gita, it is established that the Supreme Godhead, O Krishna, O Brahman, O the Supreme Controller, O Paramatma, you may use whatever name you like. He is the greatest of all. The living beings are in quality like the Supreme Controller. For instance, the Lord has control over the universal affairs of material nature, as will be explained in the later chapters of Bhagavad Gita. Material nature is not independent. She is acting under the directions of the Supreme Lord, as Lord Krishna says, Madhya Sena Prakriti Swete Sachara. This material nature is working under my direction. When we see wonderful things happening in the cosmic nature, we should know that behind this cosmic manifestation, there is a controller. Nothing could be manifested without being controlled. It is childish not to consider the controller. For instance, a child may think that an automobile is quite wonderful to be able to run without a horse or other animal pulling it. But a sane man knows the nature of the automobile's engineering arrangement. He always knows that behind the machinery there is a man, a driver. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is a driver under whose direction everything is working. Now the Jiva, or the living entities, have been accepted by the Lord, as we will note in the latter chapters, as his parts and parcels. A particle of gold is also gold. A drop of water from the ocean is also salty. And similarly, we, the living entities, being part and parcel of the Supreme Controller, Ishvara O Bhagavan, Lord Sri Krishna, have all the qualities of the Supreme Lord is minute quantity because we are Amanit Ishwaras, subordinate Ishwaras. We are trying to control nature. As presently we are trying to control space or planets, and this tendency to control is there because it is in Krishna. But although we have tendency to lord it over material nature, we should know that we are not the supreme controller. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Can I continue, Prabhu?
Yeah, unless there's any questions or reflections here.
I continue?
Yeah, continue. This is Prabhupada's given a very, if we want to understand what is Krishna consciousness, then this introduction is wonderful. It explains the whole philosophy in a very precise way. You know? Yeah, can continue this.
What is material nature? This is also explained in Gita as inferior Prakriti, inferior nature. The living entity is explained as the superior Prakriti. Prakriti is always under control, whether inferior or superior. Prakriti is female, and she is controlled by the Lord, just as the activities of a wife are controlled by the husband. Prakriti is always predominated by the Lord, who is the predominator. The living entities and material nature are both predominated, controlled by the Supreme Lord. According to the Gita, the living entities, although parts and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are to be considered Prakriti. This is clearly mentioned in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Aparayam me param jiva bhutam. The material nature is my inferior Prakriti, but beyond this is another Prakriti, jiva bhutam, the living entity. Material nature itself is constituted by 3 qualities: the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of ignorance. About these modes, there is eternal time, and by a combination of these modes of nature and under the control of purview of eternal time, there are activities which are called karma. These activities are being carried out from time immemorial, and we are suffering or enjoying the fruits of our activities. For instance, suppose I'm a businessman and have worked very hard with intelligence and amassed a great bank balance. Then I am an enjoyer. But then Say, I have lost all the money in my business, then I'm a sufferer. Similarly, in every field of life, we enjoy the results of our work or we suffer the results. This is called karma. Can I? Okay.
Yes, continue. You could, if you like. Yeah, continue.
Lord, Jiva, the living entity, Prakriti, nature, Kala, eternal time, and karma activities are all explained in the Bhagavad-Gita. Out of these five, the Lord, the living entities, the material nature, and time are eternal. The manifestation of Prakriti may be temporary, but it is not false. Some philosophers say that the manifestation is material of material nature is false, but according to the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, or according to the philosophy of the Vaishnavas, this is not so. The manifestation of the world is not accepted as false. It is accepted as real but temporary. It is likened unto a cloud which moves across the sky, or the coming of the rainy season, which nourishes grain. As soon as the rainy season is over, and as soon as the clouds goes away, all the crops which are nourished by the rain dry up. Similarly, this material manifestation takes place as a certain interval, stays for a while, and then disappears. Such are the workings of Prakriti. But this cycle is working eternally. Therefore, Prakriti is eternal. It is not false. The Lord refers to this as my Prakriti. This material nature is separated in an energy of the Supreme Lord. And similarly, the living entities are also the energy of the Supreme Lord, although they are not separated but eternally related. So the Lord, the living entity, material nature, and the time are all interrelated and are all eternal. However, the other item, karma, is not eternal. The effects of karma may be very old indeed. We are suffering or enjoying the results of our activities for time immemorial, but we can change the results of our karma or our activity, and this change depends on the perfection of our knowledge. We are engaged in various activities. Undoubtedly, we do not know what sorts of activities we should adopt to gain relief from the action and reactions of all these activities. But this is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay. Any questions here? This is also good to have a clear understanding on, especially karma is not eternal, and it's thank Krishna for that.
Yeah, that
This is
a good portion, basically.
yeah, this is what we accumulate within the material world. But sometimes this is not always clearly understood, that Prakriti is actually eternal. It's an eternal principle, but it manifests sometimes, and sometimes it becomes unmanifest. But the energy itself is always present, Prakriti. Yeah.
Prabhu, I was just thinking about Prakriti. It stays for some time, it goes away, just like our body, isn't it, Prabhu?
Yeah, but what happens? It just the actual elements that make up the body, just for instance, they will decompose, but the elements will still be there.
Yeah, the soul remains.
Well, yeah, well, the soul, as we know, the soul is eternal, but Prakriti just takes on different forms. For instance, sometimes it takes on a form of one particular body, then it will turns into dust or to ashes. And then it will again manifest in a different way. So the material nature itself, it's eternal from the point of view of being always an aspect of reality. Two, you could say, it has its purpose of correcting the conditioned souls. So in that sense, it's considered to it's not false. It's actually, as Prabhupada says, it's not false. It's actually present. But from the perspective of the spiritual world, it is temporary. Because there is philosophers or philosophies that say everything here is illusion. It doesn't exist. No, it exists, but it exists it kind of comes and it goes. It manifests for some time, and then it becomes unmanifested, and it manifests in a different form. then within that, you have the jiva who's struggling hard. Prabhupada was quoting Maya Dakshina Prakriti, who's struggling very hard for material existence. And he's quoting the verse, they're trying to lord it over this Prakriti. They're trying to lord it over the material energy. So therefore, there is karma. Yeah. And Prabhupada also mentioned about the three modes of material nature. That's chapter 14. He's mentioned chapter 7 as well. Verses in chapter 7, also chapter 9. All this, the whole introduction is based on all the different chapters of Bhagavad Gita. So our karma can change based on our knowledge. So that's described also in the 3rd chapter, also in the 4th chapter. Yeah.
Prabhu, it's a knowledge
Yeah.
and activity. Isn't it right?
Say again. Your voice is coming and going a bit.
Yeah, a knowledge and activity. Isn't it?
What?
The karma can be changed.
No, yeah. So the activity should be based on the knowledge.
Yeah.
But actually, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 4th chapter, which is entitled Transcendental Knowledge, it explains that just by obtaining transcendental knowledge itself, it says there's nothing so pure and sublime as transcendental knowledge. So just studying Bhagavad Gita with our intelligence, that can free us from karma. So now we are freeing ourselves from karma just by studying Bhagavad Gita. So that's the power of transcendental knowledge, is that if you have knowledge, and also Jnana Dipena Bhashvataha, the 4th chapter mentions that you can cross over the ocean of material existence on the boat of transcendental knowledge. So it's not indicating activity, although it should be understood that one's activity, if one has knowledge, it should be an effect of higher knowledge. So then you're going to engage in bhakti. But it describes there about the power of transcendental knowledge. It describes even if you're the most sinful of all sinners, if you're situated on the Jnana Dipena, on the boat of transcendental knowledge, you can cross over the material ocean. So it's not saying, it doesn't specifically mention there about doing specific activities, but we understand we can't just sit in an armchair. Just like Arjuna didn't just stand on a chariot and let Krishna do all the work. No, he engaged in devotional service. So the knowledge should lead to a bhakti, and bhakti entails service to Krishna. But knowledge itself is just acquiring transcendental knowledge has a profound effect. It frees one from sinful reactions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
All right. So unless there's any questions, you can continue.
The position of Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, is that of supreme consciousness. The jivas, or the living entities, being parts and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are also conscious. Both the living entity and material nature are explained as Prakriti, the energy of the Supreme Lord. But one of the two, the jiva, is conscious. The other Prakriti is not conscious. That is the difference. Therefore, Jiva Prakriti is called superior because the Jiva has consciousness which is similar to the Lord's. The Lord's is supreme consciousness, however, and one should not claim that the Jiva, the living entity, is also supremely conscious. The living being cannot be supremely conscious at any stage of his perfection. And the theory that he can be so is a misleading theory. Conscious he may be, but he is not perfectly or supremely conscious.
Yeah, so Krishna is conscious of everything. We are not conscious of everything, and we can never be. And good job, we can't. But we have a limited, if we can understand, it's described, if you understand the jiva, you can also have some understanding of the Supreme. So our consciousness is manifest throughout our body. So therefore we are conscious to some degree what's going on in our body. Like just then I have an itch on the back of my neck. Why am I doing that? Because I'm conscious of my body. My consciousness is spread throughout my body. of course, I'm not aware of everything that's going on in my body, which is just as well. I'm not aware of what's happening with the lungs, the heart, and the kidneys. Otherwise, you'd be quite psychotic or psychotic if everyone knew what was going wrong or what's not happening with all the different organs of the body. But we do feel it when we feel pain in the foot, we tread on the pin, then we feel it. So we are like God in that sense. We are, our body is our universe, and we are situated within the center of this universe of the body. So therefore we're conscious, yeah, but we're not conscious like Krishna. Krishna, this whole material world is his body. So his consciousness is spread everywhere. And he's not also, Yamaraj has this potency as well for obvious reasons, because people are dying everywhere. So he has this consciousness as well. By the grace of Krishna, Krishna blesses him with this super consciousness. Also Lord Brahma as well. And also some of the devas have expanded consciousness where they can observe things in distant places. They call it, I was reading looking at a book today by one of our scientist devotees, described that sometimes the jiva has this mystic potency to see things hundreds of miles away, or to be conscious of events in different places, you know. So that's, Krishna is conscious, so he's supremely conscious. We are not supremely conscious. All right. So something to meditate upon.
In the past, there were some rishis who also knew what is going to happen in future. Like it is mentioned in Ramayana, he already knew what is going to happen to Sita Devi when she went to see Lord Rama. So there are some rishis who have got this kind of ability or spiritual ability given to them, like a consciousness, you're saying.
Yeah, it's called Trikalagya. They can see past, present, and future.
Yeah.
They kind of tune into a higher dimension by which everything is working.
Yeah.
Some yogis, I think it's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that there's a method of mystic meditation, that if you meditate upon Krishna as being all-pervading, this is an Astanga type of yoga, you can also have that same ability.
Yeah.
Not to the complete degree that Krishna has, but you can see into the future. As Mother Sharda was saying, some sages could see that. Also, some sages, as we know, Srimad Bhagavatam, the sages at Naram Sharanya, they could see the future. But they could also see by the symptoms what was going to happen.
Yeah. Because Krishna has invested 60% of his energy into these sages.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah, well, that's quite a lot of potency, 60%. So they can see. So therefore, and what they can see is not good. So therefore, they're filled with compassion. And that's why they sit down, they want to find the remedy for the suffering of people in general. And as we know, that remedy is Srimad Bhagavatam. All right. So let's just to hit 7 o'clock, 7:01. So we'll stop there today, and we'll continue next week. Again, get ready. It's quite a long introduction. We've got a few more pages yet, but very interesting. We can get a whole synopsis of the whole philosophy here. Okay. So thank you for joining us for this session 2.
Thank you.
Of interest, and we look forward tomorrow. We're on Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So those who like to be with us to that, please do. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.